Hey guys, this is Yoda. We've got a little bit different of a guide here today. So a lot of people have been having trouble with the LFG system recently in Mythic Plus. A lot of this is caused by the tank shortage because this season is just brutal for tanks. But there are a few things you can do to make things easier for yourself, even in this horrible season. Hopefully future seasons are not like this and all of these tips will still be applicable, but not as necessary. All right, so the first tip I have for beating LFG is potentially reroll. So the best way to get into a group is to play an unpopular but necessary role. What does that mean? So obviously every Mythic Plus group has a tank, and this season tanks are in high demand because actually surviving keys is quite difficult. However, if you follow the channel, there have never been more resources available to, I guess, teach people how to play, especially the bottom tank, which is Paladin this season, how to survive in every key. Even other channels have many resources for you to learn how to play Prot Paladin. If you become a Prot Paladin this season and you can actually survive the keys that you want to do, then instead of staring at LFG, I guarantee you will be staring at your DMs instead. So number one hack for beating LFG is just play Prot Paladin and play it well. If you don't want to play Prot Paladin, but you are willing to reroll, then there is a list here in rough order of what's the easiest specs to get invited are. So if you don't play Prot Paladin, then Aug Evoker and Disc Priest, in my opinion, are the two roles that are in the highest demand. Not a lot of people prefer like the playstyle of Aug because you kind of have to play around your teammates. Also at the top level, Aug Evokers are kind of expected to be a little bit of shock callers. In Disc Priest, not everyone plays healer and not all the healers are willing to reroll, but if you are a healer or you're willing to reroll to Disc Priest, then you are, somewhat of a rare commodity. Not as rare as Prot Paladin, however. If you learn how to play Prot Paladin, again, you are basically just hacking LFG. You can log in and you will basically be in a keystone. Even if you don't know how to survive the keys, you will be in a keystone if you want to be within 10 minutes, I guarantee it. Next would be Fodom DPS, so that's Enhanced Shaman for this season. They are the main character, as everyone knows. They are receiving PI, doing the most damage, having the most utility, have a Shaman buff, etc. I would say pretty much every quote-unquote meta group is having an Enhanced Shaman in the group. So if you play Enhanced Shaman, then you're realistically only competing with other Enhanced Shamans to get into the group. Now, Enhanced Shaman, as a Fodom DPS, is somewhat popular right now, but if you want to play a true DPS, then Enhanced Shaman, in my opinion, is still your best bet for getting into groups. Now, if you don't want to play any of that, then there are some classes that are played along with Enhanced Shaman in quote-unquote meta groups, so that's Boomy Mage, Frosty K, and Rogue. Do note that if you're playing one of these, then, you're competing with everyone else in this pool, like this 4-class pool. If you're playing Enhanced Shaman, you're basically only competing with other Enhanced Shamans to get into the key group, right? If you play one of these, then you're competing with all of them. You play DK, you're competing with Rogues, Mages, and Boomies. They're all in the same pool, and who knows, maybe the guy hosting your group is like, oh, last time I had a Boomy, and this key didn't go good. This time I'm not inviting a Boomy, and if you play Boomy, then you're just screwed, right? Even if Boomy is good in that key, it doesn't really matter. All that really matters is the person that's inviting. So these are your next best bet after Enhanced Shaman. If you don't want to play any meta DPS, you also don't want to play tank or healer or Aug, then you're in a little bit of a pickle. So the next on the list I would say are Ellie Shaman and Unholy DK. So these specs are not quote-unquote meta, but they do massive damage. So it's okay kind of to form a group around them that's viable to form high keys. If you're not playing any of these, and you're playing an off meta spec, then hopefully you're at least playing a tank or a healer. It's a lot easier to get into the key, as I mentioned, if you're a tank and you can survive the key. Honestly, it doesn't even matter if you're playing Paladin. If you are playing VDH and you are somehow able to survive the keys that you want to do, or Bear, as has been shown by Squish in NA, shout out to Squish, you can still play the game. It's still really easy to get into groups if you're playing a tank, even if it's not bottom, and you can still survive. Healer balance is a little bit better than tank balance, so it's also kind of easier to get in as an off-meta healer than an off-meta DPS. And then finally, playing an off-meta DPS, then you are probably just like the majority of players. Not only are you basically excluded from any group that is only inviting meta DPS, so, a lot of the groups are like that. A lot of people who are hosting keys are not going to want to invite off-meta DPS, especially off-meta DPS that are underqualified. Like if you haven't done the key that you're applying for, it's very unlikely that you're getting in as an off-meta DPS. Not only are you competing with like the people who are just straight up never inviting off-meta DPS, you're also competing with all the other off-meta DPS that are applying. So like, let's say you just really love Warlock and you're applying to keys. Well, not only are you competing with other Warlocks, you're also competing with the Feral Druids, you're competing the Outlaw Rogues, you're competing with the Sub Rogues, you're competing with the Red Paladins, and that's only if the party leader is even willing to invite an off-meta DPS in the first place. So you're basically setting yourself quite far behind in the quote-unquote meta of getting into LFG if you play off-meta DPS. Understandably, not everyone wants to role swap, not everyone wants to change classes, it's not an option for everyone. So that is my first piece of advice, but there are other pieces of advice that you can use to your advantage. There are very high-rated players of off-meta specs as well. So what is the first best way to avoid your pickle if you're playing an off-meta DPS? So the best way is to form a pre-made group. You can do this as anyone, of course. but off-meta specs tend to be forced to form pre-made groups more often than others. You know, it's kind of harder to get 5 people together to want to do a key. You have to like message people, which is kind of scary if you're, you know, a socially inept WoW player like me. You also have to form the group, like you have to find a tank, find a healer, find whoever else is in the group that's not you into the same party that is like roughly the same skill level, and they have to have keys that everyone's willing to do, or at least someone has to have a key and no one can hate each other, etc. So forming the group is actually not that easy. If you're willing to be the person that takes on that burden, then you're going to find yourself in groups way more than other people. Also, forming a group requires having, you know, a certain connections. You need to have like a list of friends on Battle.net, maybe Discord or whatever other community you use. And you get those players into your list by just playing the game, you know, either pugging keys or joining a friends group or whatever. And whenever you play with someone that you enjoy playing, just add them to battle tag, send them a nice message after the key. Maybe you'll play with them again in the future. You know, now they're on your list, you can create your network and start inviting people. So if you're willing to put forth the effort to make a key group, a lot of people aren't willing to put that effort in. So if you are basically taking care of that for them, then they'll be willing to play with you, even if you're playing like something off meta, or even if your DPS sucks, or you know, it takes you a little bit longer to learn stuff. If you're willing to put together the group, then a lot of people will be willing to play with you anyway. So that's tip 2. Tip 3 is to become actually good at the keys so that you get invited back. Number 1, if you're playing an off-meta DPS or just any DPS in general, then just do massive overall. If you're trying to play with new people and you're trying to impress them, nothing will impress people more than just doing massive damage. Everyone has like some sort of way to track DPS in this game, just to see like quote unquote how good the people they're playing with is. There are other ways to impress people, so you can like, you know, be willing to take on jobs in the key and do them well all the time. You can become a shot caller, etc. There's 2 ways to do high overall DPS. Number 1, just do your rotation really well. You know, there's target dummies in Dornegal. If you're just browsing LFG anyway, you might as well start hitting the target dummies to make yourself do more damage and have your rotation clean. Number 2, make your character as strong as possible. There is absolutely no reason for you to be applying to keys that are IO for you and just chain getting rejected from LFG if you could still be farming crests. Kind of silly, but think of it this way. If you're applying to a key, right, and you're a 630, and then someone else is applying to the key and they're 633 and you have the same IO, guess what? The guy that's 633 is getting invited, not you. So do everything in your power to increase your item level. Also, 4 out of 8 Mythic, a lot of people, at least in my experience in like Twitch chat or whatever, have said, oh yeah, I hate raid, I will never raid, and I stand by that. I'm a Mythic Plus purist. Unfortunately, World of Warcraft doesn't really work like that. The stronger your character is, the more likely you are to get invited, and the more likely you are to be successful in the key. It has literally never been this easy to get 4 out of 8 Mythic. It takes very minimal research, and you just need to get into a group or host your own group even. Maybe your guild is running an alt Mythic, like if you're in a friends guild and they normally do like a full raid and then they have like an alt run that's 4 out of 8 Mythic maybe, or you have a friend that's in a guild that's doing that. You can sneak into the run as long as you just know the very basic mechanics of these bosses. They are super easy at this point. There's like a massive buff in the raid that makes them killable with like 4 buyers or something. So these raids are extremely easy, especially the first 4 bosses, which also happen to drop the best loot. Almost all classes in the game have like their best loot from the first 4 bosses, with the exception of int classes that need spy masters. So getting to learn how to do those first 4 bosses are going to be massive for you. You know, if it's not War Within Season 1, you're watching this video later, then maybe this season will be different, but try to pug extremely easy Mythic bosses early in the season. It's going to make your life way easier, going to make your eye level higher, and that's going to get you invited. And it's also going to make you time more keys after you get invited. So we kind of touched on this earlier, but learn the dungeons, become a resource in the key. If you show up to the key, doesn't matter if you do massive damage, if you have absolutely no idea what's going on, and you just die to every mechanic, or you don't do jobs that people are expecting you to do, then it's going to be awkward. It's going to be hard to get invited back, and also you're probably not going to time the key in the first place. So, I mean, there have never been so many resources available, both on my channel or other people's channels, whatever. You can just watch a VOD and see what people are doing. There's outright guides explaining every single dungeon mechanic in the whole dungeon. You know, watch some of those, maybe watch some Twitch streams, and just figure out what people are doing. And also, when you're in the key, don't just focus on your damage. Obviously, you want to do high damage, but you also want to understand what's going on in these keys. Now that Blizzard has removed affixes, they have moved a lot of the difficulty into the dungeons themselves. So learning the dungeon mechanics and how to play properly around them is going to be big, not only for your own success, but big for getting invited into groups after you play with them. Once you learn actually how to do all the dungeons, the next step would be learning how to tell other people how to do the dungeons, which is becoming a shot caller. Not everyone can be a shot caller, but if this is an option for you, then shot calling is like an LFG hack. It's almost as good as playing tank. If you join a group and basically no one knows what's going on, but you lead them to victory, then that means that group cannot play the game if you're not in the group, which means they're going to invite you back every single time. If you basically just learn what every role is supposed to do in every key, or at least just like learn what is going to happen in every key, like what's coming up. You can just say like, oh, this is the next mechanic, this is coming up next, this is coming up next, get ready to do this or whatever. If you become really good at that, then that is an LFG hack. It's almost as good as playing Prod Paladin. All right, and then the last thing is protect your keystone. Don't just loot your key at the start of the week, list it, and then invite the first 4 people that apply. If you're trying to climb the M+ ladder, it's no secret, people aren't really playing M+ purely for the love of the game. They're playing so they can get score by timing higher keys. So if you list like a 13 in LFG, you're going to get wildly different players than if you list like a 15 or a 16. Just different people are going to apply to your key, and the ones applying to the higher key are going to be better at the game. And if you want to beat LFG, then you want to be playing with better players so you can do well in their key and then add them to your battle tag, etc. So protect your keystone. As a caveat to this and as an aside, if you join a group and you're just never willing to run your key, then it's going to make things awkward, and it's going to cause you to maybe not get invited back later. But also just keep in mind that your key is a valuable resource that you can use to either network or just get score for yourself. So don't waste it. Don't just send your key like into LFG and just pray it works out. That is going to basically waste your resources. All right, so that was a quick guide to LFG. If you have any comments, which I'm sure you do, be sure to leave a comment in the comment section, or you can hit me up in Twitch chat. I'm usually always paying attention and happy to talk about this stuff. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. Peace out.